Hello and welcome to today's Devotional. My name is Jack Heineke, and today we're going into the book of Luke, chapter 22, verses 41 and 42. And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, and knelt down and prayed, saying, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup of divine wrath from me. Yet not my will, but always your will be done. The word will has many meanings. It is our desires, what we want, what we don't want, and what we end up choosing for ourselves throughout our lives. We operate in our will on a daily, regular basis. I encountered this word in a very personal and powerful way in the third step of the 12 steps. That step states that the person in recovery from addiction made a decision to turn our lives and our will to the care of God as we understood Him. Now that's of course talking about the we and the us of the fellowship, of that fellowship that uses those 12 steps. But I had to make a personal decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God as I understood Him. I can't do it based on anyone else's understanding, and I have to be the one to make that decision. And I've thought long and hard about this step, and I've talked and I've listened to many others discuss this step. I've often wondered why the step included my will when my life should cover all of it, shouldn't it? My life and my will. And that both will be given to God for Him to take care of. It's interesting that they include my will in there because the people that wrote the 12 steps were alcoholics, essentially. And they knew themselves very well. And they knew that they needed to include my life and my will because they understood the danger of their will being under their own control. They felt a need to place their own will under the control of God, and that both life and will would be given to God for Him to take care of. I was at a third step meeting with a friend many years ago, and when we left the meeting, he was talking about how if you notice at third step meetings where the third step is the topic, that people generally talk about turning their will over and then taking their will back and stories based on that, and or they will talk about the God of their understanding. But one of the things that he said that really jumped out at me and just jumped into my head, and it's been in my heart ever since he said it, was that there are 4 words in the center of that step that people very rarely, if ever, really talk about in a third step meeting. And that's to the care of. What it implies, what it says is that God will care for our lives and for our will. And that's a bit deeper and a bit more profound than me giving my life and will over to God and taking it back, and or necessarily even what God means to me. Because this is a moment of trust. When you actually do this in your life, what you're saying is that I trust that God will take care of me, my life, and my will. That's not an easy thing for people to do, by the way. We generally guard our will to the core, and will fight tooth and nail with whoever threatens our ability to exercise our will. That's one of the fundamentals of the Bill of Rights, is that human beings have their own will and they need to be recognized to be able to operate in their will. But in order to actually live this step, one must be able to trust this God completely, quite frankly. Jesus showed us in His attitude and actions what submission to the Father really looks like. That word submission is not a popular word either, but the word Christian means to be Christ-like. And if that's what I call myself, then shouldn't my life look like that? The truth is that all too often it doesn't look like that. Not to me and not to God. What you see is what I choose to project. You don't see it all. especially those ungodly inner attitudes that I choose maybe not to behave upon or voice. They're in there though. Last night at men's group, the pastor mentioned dealing with men in marriage counseling sessions, and that he's actually dealing with a bunch of cowards. Ouch. That word stung me because it's my truth as well. As a husband, I've been a coward. Now, you may beg to differ on that, but quite frankly, your opinion on this doesn't really matter, because it's my life, my take on it. And although God has cast my sin as far as the east is from the west, God knows the truth. But the truth will set us free if we allow God to use that truth in ways that heal us and bring us back and restore us back to Him. God doesn't show me that truth and then wash His hands of me. He shows it to me to heal me and to hopefully heal the relationships where that impacted someone else. You see, God will show us harsh truths about ourselves, not to condemn us, but to bring us into a greater capacity of actually being Christ-like. Because isn't that the whole point of being a Christian? Yeah, we get forgiveness, we get entrance into heaven, we get resurrection from the dead, we get to spend eternity with God and with all the people there. But really, it's not just about what takes place there after we die. It's about what takes place in our world, in our lives, in the here and now. And it's incredibly clear to me that the world doesn't need Jack without God. That the world has no use whatsoever for Jack, who is in agreement with the world, without God. Although they may see someone else who joins their side and allies along with them, that's not what those people in the world really need. What they really need is the truth that can set them free. What they really need is the truth that is the only way to the Father. What they need are people who are actually willing to be Christ-like. Jesus exemplified a life that was fully committed to God. Jesus is the one that set the example. And in this garden, on the night of his arrest, he asked the Father if this cup of wrath, not meant for himself, but for you and I, that it would be taken from him. But Jesus knew that his taking this cup to himself was the very reason why he was here. He knew that no human being could be holy enough, and that he alone had the ability to perform this sacrifice. So obedient Jesus ends with the only proper ending by saying, "Not my will be done, but your will be done, always." That right there is the example for us as Christians, as believers, as followers of Christ, where we are told, we are commanded to pick up our cross daily. The cross is a method of execution. It's a way of saying, my flesh, my will, apart from God's will not get its way today. Then I'm responsible to take that unholy carcass, my flesh, and nail it to a cross. Jesus himself tells us that if you want to find life, you have to be willing to give up your life. And he's actually true. If you've ever had moments where you tested this and actually tried it to see how it would work, you find life. You find enduring, eternal life in the here and now. And it's a beautiful, wonderful thing to be able to find that. It's not just what happens to us after we die. It's what happens to us in the here and now. The prayer of the Son, "Not my will, but your will be done always." This needs to be my prayer for myself always. For the will of God must be the greatest, the smartest, the best will in the universe. So if you're inclined to pray, I ask that you pray this for me. And I'll pray it for all of you, for the will of God is what I believe everyone in this world needs. So I thank you for listening, and I hope and I pray that this message touched you, reached you, challenges you, and that you'd be willing to subscribe and like it and share this with people that you think would benefit from it. I hope you have an awesomely blessed day today.